First-party Nintendo Switch 2 games such as Pokemon Legends EA, Metroid Prime 4, and Kirby Air Riders are currently on sale for $30 at Costco. Yes, $30. That is a discount of nearly 60% off of games that are less than 6 months old from a company that famously never discounts anything significantly. So this is a huge win for gamers who rejected Nintendo's overpriced business model, but the folks over at Nintendo certainly are not happy about this. You see, retailers don't offer 60% off on games that just barely missed sales targets. Discounts that big happen when demand collapses and they need to move a lot of units as soon as possible. And if it were only Costco offering discounts, then that would be one thing, but it's not, because when you zoom out, there is a pattern forming around Switch 2 software in the United States that Nintendo really doesn't want you to notice. And it's not just third-party retailers. Nintendo themselves have started making pricing concessions that they have never made in the history of this company. And here's the part that makes all of this click. In February, Nintendo president Shuntaro Furukawa sat in front of investors and admitted on record that Switch 2 sales overseas were, quote, somewhat weaker than expected. And when you pull up Nintendo's own financial data, you see why. Through the first 3 quarters, the Switch 2 has sold roughly 38 million software units across an install base of about 17.37 million. That is only 2.18 games per console in 9 months on a brand new platform. For context, that means the average Switch 2 owner bought their console, picked up only 2 games over the course of 9 months, and then just stopped. So today I want to walk you through every piece of this puzzle: the retailers, fire sales, the pricing concessions, the financial admissions, because when you line it all up, it tells a very different story than Nintendo is doing fine. So let's jump right in here, folks. This is the story that just came out a couple of days ago. Players are reporting a surprise fire sale on Switch 2 games at Costco. Pokemon Legends EA and more are apparently being sold for just $30. Now, what I find funny is that the original title of this article that was posted on Kotaku was Costco is randomly selling big Switch 2 games for just $30, and I think they had to change that title because it is not random. Okay, there's nothing random about this. The evidence is overwhelming that no one is buying these games, and so they're kind of forced to do this. So let's read what they have to say here. If you're behind on your Switch 2 game collection and out and about this weekend, it might not be a bad idea to swing by your local Costco. The wholesale warehouse retailer appears to be running a surprise sale on recent releases like Kirby Air Riders and Pokemon Legends EA, and the savings are steep. Games that are normally $70 are ringing up for just $30. That is a 57% discount on games that are less than 6 months old. That does not happen even amongst Costco, which obviously is a discount club. Okay, that's what they do. Normal discounts at Costco are what you see for Mario Tennis Fever, which is $63. Okay, this was reported by Wario64 on Twitter. News of the unexpected deal started circulating on the Switch 2 subreddit last night, and it made its way to Wario64 as more players started sharing personal experiences of trying to take advantage of the discounts. Initially, people were seeing the discounts show up on the Costco app, but were still getting the regular prices charged to them at checkout. A few managed to get overrides, with reports that the in-store systems hadn't updated to the new sales prices yet. As of Saturday, April 18th, it sounds like people in store are having no problem getting some of last year's biggest Switch 2 releases, including Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, for what amounts to a bargain bin price in the world of Nintendo. It's unclear how long the sale will last, and it's heavily dependent on what local stores already have in stock. Now, as you guys know, I talked about this recently on the channel, but my girlfriend actually got a Switch 2 for Pokemon Pokopia, and she was actually the one that told me about this. She was like, hey, did you see that Legends EA is on sale at Costco? And she was considering getting it. Turns out in New York City, those discounts were available, but the game sold out pretty quickly. I also saw on Twitter, unfortunately I didn't like the tweet, so I can't prove it. Okay, this is a trust me bro moment, but people were actually taking pictures of like stacks of these games games that they bought at Costco so they could resell them over on eBay or Facebook Marketplace or wherever the scum of the earth resell these things. Okay, which is just another point in the graph showing that scalpers ruin everything. Wait guys, look at Tiger sleeping on my audio mixer right now. It's so cute. Hi Tiger, look who came to say hi again. Sleepy Tiger likes to hang out with me while I record these videos. I just want to thank you guys who've been liking all the videos lately and using the new hype feature. And hey, if you made it this far into the video, hopefully you guys will consider dropping a thumbs up down below. It really does help out the channel a ton. Thank you. But anyway, the article goes on to show the pictures and evidence shown from Wario64 over on Twitter. This is true. This is real. Of course, lots of people are reporting this. I'm probably the last one to talk about this, but what's important is the context with which all of this is occurring, because gamers are kind of winning, folks. We'll talk about that later in this video, but the article finishes by saying my nearest Costco was showing plenty of copies of Kirby Air Riders, but very low inventory for Pokemon Legends EA. That's because Kirby Air Riders is a super niche game. But anyway, if you do try to take advantage of this spring fire sale, make sure to check it online first. Some people have been cracking jokes about these sale prices, reflecting how poorly these games have sold. While that seems laughable in the case of Pokemon, Kirby Air Riders and Metroid Prime 4 certainly didn't set the world on fire, and Switch 2 did have a rough holiday season in the United States compared to past console launches and some analyst expectations. We covered all that on the channel here. It's amazing to see that the journalists have finally caught up to what we've been saying here on the channel since, like, I don't know, November of 2025, so 6 months ago. Welcome to the party. More likely than not, however, this is just Costco being Costco. That is not correct. This is not just Costco, and we'll prove that in this video. But as we can see here, there are comments on this article saying they were $50 when I saw them at my local Costco last week, but it wasn't quite enough for me to pounce, even knowing how rarely Nintendo games go on real sales anymore. They used to go on sale more often, but in the last few years it's been rare, and this is definitely something that I have noticed as well. I recently actually started shopping at Costco, and these discounts are relatively common, and this is kind of shocking, right? I mean, like I said at the beginning of this video, a 60% or a 57% discount is not something that you do willy-nilly because you just barely miss sales expectations. No, there is a massive gap between the expectation and what it actually sold. That's what causes a nearly 60% discount on games, because as this commenter says, they've already tried smaller discounts. It wasn't enough, and so you have to resort to something even bigger. Anything ending in 0.97 at Costco is clearance and not going to be restocked. It's not a sale. It's priced to get rid of inventory to make space for something else. That is honestly, I don't know if that is 100% true. I have heard that as well back when they started doing the sale on the Xbox series of consoles, right? This was a few months ago. Costco just stopped selling Xbox stuff. I think Sam's Club as well. And I did hear of this. I don't know if this is a rumor or speculation or whatever. If you guys work at Costco and can confirm this, let me know. But one thing is for sure, if 5-month-old Switch 2 games are not on sale but are on clearance, literally liquidation, that is not good news for the future of Nintendo and Costco's relationship. Not to say that this is accurate, and for sure I'm sure they'll still sell Nintendo stuff in the future, but like, very interesting data point here. And this user says Nintendo's first party pricing has always been completely ridiculous. $70 for Kirby Air Riders and Mario Tennis Fever. Really? These games clearly had AA budgets, likely less than 20 million each. So did Pokemon Legends EA, which is disgusting considering how much money they print, and in no way justify the same MSRP as AAA games with $100 to $300 million budgets. $30 should be the MSRP for most Nintendo games. Absolutely based. Now this person says your perceived value does not control how it should be priced. That is also definitely true, but in the case of these games, not only is the budget low, but the quality is also low as well. So it goes beyond perception. It is objectively the case that these games are just lower quality, right? I mean, Metroid Prime 4 is a literal Switch 1 game. Same thing with Legends EA. Tiny map, not a lot of gameplay there, right? Kirby Air Riders, I guess you can make the exception. We already talked about Mario Tennis Fever on the channel, literally almost a reskin of Mario Tennis Aces, right? So absolutely not in the $70 ballpark. So while it's true that your perception of a product doesn't necessarily reflect what it should be priced, in this case it is objectively true that these are in fact lower quality products, and so of course should be lower prices. But as I said before, it is not just Costco that is lowering prices, and in fact we have seen over the last couple of months many different retailers offering discounts on Switch 2 games and hardware, one of the most common of which being Woot, which is literally an Amazon subsidiary. Okay, 9 to 5 Toys posted a couple of days ago, 4 days ago at this point, a bunch of different games for the Switch and Switch 2 are on sale over at Woot. So Mario Galaxy and Galaxy 2 are $55, regularly $70, which is shocking considering the Mario Galaxy movie is doing numbers in the box office right now. Last I checked, it was underselling the original, but still a massive success, of course. So to have the game, I mean, literally the movie is basically marketing for the games, right? I mean, like, what are we talking about? And so to have the literal largest beneficiary of the box office success being the Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 bundle, you would think it would be flying off the shelves, but here we can see over on Woot that it is actually discounted. Okay, it is 21% off. Again, this is an Amazon subsidiary. You can see that it literally says an Amazon company in the logo, and if you have a Prime membership you get free shipping. Like, Amazon bought Woot. This is literally just how Amazon liquidates excess inventory. Okay, I've talked about this in depth in previous videos. You guys can look this up for yourselves. Woot is one of the primary ways that Amazon gets rid of overstock and also tests different pricing strategies to see how well it does with a smaller market, and then if it does well, maybe they extend that to actual Amazon.com, right? So here you can see a bunch of different games that have big discounts on the Switch. Again, Galaxy 1 and 2 is the biggest one here. These games are brand new, sealed. They are the international version of the games, so they do work on the North American release of the Switch and Switch 2 as far as I know, but just double check on that. But also, if you scroll down here, we'll see that Animal Crossing is currently on sale for $55. This is the Switch 2 edition. Okay, so this is, I mean, one of the latest things to come out for the Switch 2. They did actually end up charging $5 more for this, okay, which was hilarious. A $5 premium for slapping the Switch 2 logo on the front of the box. There were some enhancements to the game, don't get me wrong, but here you can see that they dropped the price $10, a 15% discount for another Switch 2 game. I've covered in the past instances where Donkey Kong Bonanza found its way over on Woot, and even as recently as March, late March, we see IGN posting that there was a massive sale over on Woot that included Mario Kart World on Switch 2 for $52. Okay, so that is a 35% discount for, again, another Switch 2 game. We see they also had discounts on Pokemon games as well. They also had Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 USA version was $47, so 33% off. Okay, so the current price of Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 isn't even the lowest price that it was in the last couple of weeks, right? Which is just hilarious. Again, this is on the heels of the massive success of the Mario Galaxy movie, which is supposed to be sending this game flying off the shelves, and yet here we see Amazon is trying to get rid of as many copies as they can. But if we continue looking at the trend of Nintendo pricing, we actually can look back at the end of March when Nintendo updated their pricing model and strategy for Switch 2 games. This is literally Nintendo's own website. They had a press release that said, beginning in May of 2026, that is next month, and starting with pre-orders for Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, new Nintendo published digital titles exclusive to Switch 2 will have an MSRP that is different from physical versions. Nintendo games offer the same experiences whether in packaged or digital format, and this change simply reflects the different costs associated with producing and distributing each format and offers players more choice in how they can buy and play Nintendo games. As always, retail partners set their own prices for physical and digital games, and pricing for each title may vary. This is true in theory, but a lie by omission, and the reason for this is because we have evidence from Nintendo themselves as to why this is actually happening. Okay, so let's take a step back here, use a little bit of logic. Okay, I know this is rare these days, people don't like to do this on the internet, but let's use some logic. Okay, remember just a month ago when Pokemon Pokopia came out, and it was immediately very hard to get in retail stores. It was $70. It was a game key card, and all of the local places did not have it. It was sold out across the country. Walmart, Target, Best Buy, GameStop, Amazon, nobody had it in stock. Okay, and therefore lots of people had to buy it digitally. And okay, let's ask ourselves a question. Okay, what did it cost? What did it cost digitally? It was $70. Okay, and why is that? Well, it's because people bought it. Yeah, pretty simple stuff there. Okay, when a game is good, good and there was demand for it, people are going to pay for it. Okay, they spent $70 on Pokemon Pokopia, and once the hype died down for that game, okay, this was released like 20 days after Pokemon Pokopia came out, then they announced a lower price for digital games, right? So suck up all the money from the artificial scarcity of the physical copy of Pokemon Pokopia, have everyone pay $70 for Pokopia digitally, right? Then announce a price drop for digital. And why would they do this? Well, as we'll see in just a minute, I do have the data here. I will show you Nintendo's own data. This is not something I calculated. Nintendo's own release data that shows how poorly games are selling on the Switch 2. And so what do you do when games are not selling well? You have to lower the price. And so doing it this way is a way to kind of add some plausible deniability. Like, oh, okay, yeah, it makes sense. You have to manufacture a physical game, so it would make sense that the digital would be cheaper. But then, okay, if that's true, why didn't you do that from the beginning of the console, right? It's because you thought you could get away with it. That's the only explanation. Of course, that's why they did it. They thought they could get 70 for it. And now that they've released half a dozen games on the Switch 2 and they're not selling as well as they think, they're like, okay, well, drop the price. That's obviously what's happening here. Anybody that doesn't see that is intellectually bankrupt. They don't have a lot going on upstairs. Okay, but let's see what Gaming Bible has to say about this. Nintendo confirmed Switch 2 permanent price drop. Rejoice. This is a very consumer friendly move. It is. I'm happy to see this. Any reduction in cost for consumers right now is a good thing. Okay, what I don't like is the fact that Nintendo is raising the price, waiting a few months, and then dropping the price, and then people praise them for it. It's like, duh, dummy, wake up, hello, you fell for it. They literally tricked you. Like, it's embarrassing, right? In an unexpected turn of events, if you've watched the channel, this was very expected. Okay, we've talked about this for months, that the sales were poor for these things. Everybody saw this coming if you were actually paying attention. But anyway, Nintendo has revealed a permanent price drop pertaining to its first party games. Nintendo will soon be charging less for its first party games that are launching digitally, beginning with Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, which is due May 21st. Originally, Nintendo made the error of stating that beginning with Yoshi, digital and physical copies would be priced differently, leading many to assume that meant physical copies would be seeing an increase. Thankfully, that is not the case. They then confirmed that digital copies will drop to $60 and physical copies will be $70. Okay, so that is the confirmation. That is what is happening here. And again, like, let's just use a little bit of logic here. What did games cost on the Switch 1? That's right, they were $60. Okay, so they raised the price for the Switch 2 across the board for digital and physical, and then they only dropped digital, right? So effectively what's happening here is no change in price for digital, increased price for physical. That's actually what happened with Switch 2, right? So they poisoned the well, and then 9 months later come around with the antidote. It's like, oh gee, thanks, appreciate that. Physical games still cost $10 more than they used to though, so I mean, it's not really a full W, but I guess I'll take what I can get from the multi-billion-dollar corporation. But that's not the only thing that Nintendo has done to try to encourage people to buy more games for the Switch 2. This was reported just a couple of days ago over on Nintendo Everything. Nintendo starts up new Spotlight sale for Switch 2 and Switch, multiple games at new low prices. Nintendo has gathered a bunch of third-party games together as a part of a new sale for Switch and Switch 2. A ton of different titles have been discounted on the Nintendo eShop. And this is especially important because, as you guys know, as reported by the Game Business back in June of 2025, most third-party Switch 2 games posted very low sales numbers. One third-party publisher characterized the numbers as, quote, below our lowest estimates, end quote, despite strong hardware sales. So it's no coincidence that Nintendo is launching a Spotlight sale specifically for third-party games. It's obvious why they're doing this. They see that third parties are struggling, and they have been struggling for almost a year at this point. 10 months of third-party games struggling on Switch 2. That's not my assumption. That's what third-party game developers are saying from the horse's mouth. And we'll also look at Nintendo data that proves that as well. So Nintendo's hand is forced here once again to lower the price of games on Switch 2. Assassin's Creed Shadows, big third-party game that landed on Switch 2. It is now $40, down from $60. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero Ultimate Edition, down to $70, kind of insane. Basically FIFA here was $70, down to $21. Madden, okay, Madden 26 down from 70 to 14. Hogwarts Legacy $30, down from 60, so it's a 50% discount. NBA 2K26 $80, down to $20. Sonic Racing Crossworld Switch 2 edition $70, down to 42. Sonic Shadow Generations $50, down to 20. Star Wars Outlaws, this was like the big third-party game. Everyone's like, oh, Star Wars Outlaws for Switch 2, dude, yeah, $60 down to 40. Skyrim $60 down to 30. 3, WWE 2K26, $70 down to $60. I think you guys get the drill, right? And they also are discounting Switch 1 games as well. Okay, so this is not just Switch 2, but my point is, it's obvious what's happening here. This is now the 4th point on the graph of price reductions for Switch 2 games that we've talked about in this video. So now let's connect all of these dots, because individually you can explain each of these away. Costco is just clearing away inventory. Woot they always run sales. The Spotlight sale is just third-party publishers adjusting. The digital pricing change is just Nintendo reflecting distribution costs. Sure, each one has a plausible explanation, but when you put them all on a timeline, Woot discounting launch titles within weeks of the Switch 2's release, by the way, that was Donkey Kong Bonanza, we covered this on the channel, and still discounting stuff up until this week. Third-party developers saying sales were below their lowest estimates by June. Remember when Walmart was giving away Mario Kart World for free with the console bundle for Cyber Monday, and then all the other retailers adjusted to reflect that, right? And then in February of this year, we had Nintendo's own president admitting to investors that Western sales missed expectations. This is the Q&A from March of 2026. Okay, we can scroll down here. President Shuntaro Furukawa said on record, "As for the volume of hardware sales, you are correct that sales in Japan exceeded our expectations, while overseas sales were somewhat weaker than expected." And then when we look at the actual sales data that Nintendo released, you can see Switch 2 sales for Q1 through Q3, 17.37 million units. Software sales for Switch 2, 37.93 million units. Okay, so that is 2.18 games per console sold. 2.18. And keep in mind, 80% of these sales were the Mario Kart World bundle or the Pokemon Legends EA bundle. Okay, so that means people got the game it came with, and then they bought on average one other game, and 1 in 5 people bought 2 more games in a 9-month period. That is abysmally low. 2 games over 9 months. That's literally Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza, and then nobody bought anything else. Game sales by Nintendo's own data were horrible for the first 3 quarters of the Switch 2. And so once you know that, everything falls into perspective, right? Remember when Bloomberg was reporting a 30% production cut for the Switch 2 back in March? And now we see Nintendo restructuring their digital game pricing. And here we are in April, the Spotlight sale is going live, and then Costco is selling first-party games for 57% off. This is not a series of coincidences, folks. This is a trend line at this point, and it's pointing in one direction. It's pointing down. And this is what blows my mind, is like, I have been saying this for 6 months now. This has been the easiest thing to predict for anybody who can do any sort of data analysis, even at an amateur level. And the only thing that the Nintendo fanboys say is fastest selling console ever. It's like, buddy, that happened the first 3 days. We're talking about everything after that, okay? And we had to have like 10 points on the graph before journalists and other media outlets started picking up on this, when it was clear after like 3 or 4. And that's what pisses me off, is that I've been tanking hate from the dummies in the community who can't do math. They don't know anything about what they're talking about. And finally, almost a year later, it's like, turns out sales numbers weren't that great. As a matter of fact, we've got now 10 different points on the graph to prove it. And the numbers really do tell the story. I mean, like I said, 37.93 million software units sold across 17.37 million consoles, 2.18 games per Switch 2 owner over the first 9 months of this platform's life. To put that into perspective, the Switch 1 launched with Breath of the Wild and had people buying 3, 4, 5 games in its first year because the value proposition was clear. $60 games on a $300 console. The Switch 2 launched at $450 with $70 games, and consumers responded exactly how you'd expect them to. They bought the hardware, they grabbed Mario Kart because it was bundled or because it's Mario Kart, and then they looked at the eShop, saw $70 price tags on everything, and said, I'm good. And by the way, that's for the United States. Ask the Canadians what they think about the price of Switch 2 games, and let alone Europe. Some places in Europe it's crazy as as well. And Furukawa essentially confirmed all of this when an investor directly asked him whether sales outside Japan came up short. His response was, quote, "You are correct that sales in Japan exceeded our expectations, while overseas sales were somewhat weaker than expected," end quote. He then went on to explain that Japanese consumers adopted the Switch 2 at a higher rate because titles like Pokemon Legends ZA and Kirby Air Riders drove hardware transitions through the holidays. But we know that in the West, Legends ZA was not exactly a super beloved title. Everyone could see it for what it was. It was rushed, it was slop, it looked horrible. Just look at the game, look at the gameplay, look at the trailers. It takes 2 seconds. You don't need to be a rocket scientist or a game developer to see that the game looks like shit, okay? And Kirby Air Riders, good as it may be for the niche audience that loves it, it's a niche game. At the end of the day, it appeals to the Japanese audience and not really out here in the West. So that momentum just didn't happen in the West, at least not at the same rate. And the most likely reason is price sensitivity. The US market looked at the $70 games on a $450 console, and a lot of people decided to wait. So where does this leave us? Well, honestly, it leaves us in a pretty interesting place, because the story here isn't that the Switch 2 is a failure. It's not. I mean, what are we talking about? Of course it's not. 17 million units in 9 months is a strong number by any historical standard. The hardware was, and to an extent still is, still selling, even if it is propped up by the Japanese market. The problem is that Nintendo built their entire Switch 2 business model around the idea that they could charge more for everything, more for the console, more for the games, more for the accessories, and the Nintendo brand would be strong enough to absorb it. And in Japan it was, but in the US and Europe, consumers pushed back. Why? Because prices were noticeably higher in the United States than they were in Japan. And they didn't push back by just writing angry Reddit posts. They didn't push back by signing petitions. They pushed back the only way that actually matters. A lot of people stopped buying. They bought 2 games over the course of 9 to 12 months. And now we're watching Nintendo react in real time. The digital pricing restructure, the bundle promotions. Look at this. This is on Nintendo's own website. Nintendo Switch 2 system with Mario Galaxy and Super Mario Galaxy 2, you save $20, okay? Nintendo partnered with retailers to make this impromptu, clearly unplanned bundle a reality with a price cut. And just to be clear, this is not like, oh, you know, the same thing with the Mario Kart World bundle where it's a digital code in the box, and they clearly planned this in advance because it went through the production line with the stickers on the box or printed on the box with the code in the box. No. This is an afterthought. Obviously, this is an afterthought. You have to go to the store, get the Switch 2 and the game separately, and then they will apply a last minute discount of $20. This was never in the cards. Nintendo obviously thought that the Mario Galaxy movie would drum up so much hype that it would send these games flying off the shelves, and to an extent it did, but it clearly needs some help. And again, on top of that, we have the eShop fire sales for the third-party games. We have the production cuts of the console. Every single one of these moves is Nintendo slowly and quietly acknowledging that the $70 price point was too aggressive for this market. They won't say that publicly. Furukawa is never going to hold a press conference and say, we overpriced our games, we were wrong, but actions speak louder than earnings call fluff language. And right now, Nintendo's actions are screaming. So if you're a gamer who looked at the Switch 2 launch lineup, looked at the price tags, and decided to wait, congratulations, you won. The prices are coming down. The sales are getting deeper. 57% off games that are 5 months old. And if this trajectory continues into the fall, I would not be surprised if, one, they don't increase the price of the Switch 2 like everyone has been predicting for months and months and months, right? It seems like every month we get a new video from YouTubers saying, oh, it's happening. The Switch 2 price increase is coming, right? And I made those videos back when no one was talking about it. Now it seems like it's the consensus, everyone agrees, and yet we're still not seeing it, okay? So I wouldn't be surprised if they actually didn't increase the price of the Switch 2 given the actual conditions of the market right now. And I also wouldn't be surprised if we saw more discounts and bundles this holiday season, unless we see a big game that sends more of these consoles and games flying off the shelf. Nintendo tried to charge more, the market said no, and the $30 copy of Pokemon at Costco is the evidence. Guys, if you made it all the way to the end of the video, consider dropping a thumbs up on it. It really does help out the channel a ton. And you might think you're subscribed because you've seen a bunch of my videos, but you're actually not. Double check down below.